Welcome. Today we're doing a deep dive into something really fundamental. How power actually works. Not just the theory, but, in the real world.
Yeah, and it often runs counter to what people assume.
Exactly. Like there's that famous line from Mao Zedong, right? Power grows out of the barrel of a gun.
Right, that's the classic view. Force equals power. It feels kind of intuitive, maybe.
Sure does.
But decades of research, particularly around nonviolent strategy, really challenge that. Actually, they pretty much debunk it.
So what's the alternative then, if not the gun?
Well, the understanding that's emerged is that power really stems from consent and cooperation, specifically the consent and cooperation of the institutions that, keep a system running. It's not just about brute force.
Okay, consent and cooperation from institutions. Let's really unpack that. So our mission today is a deep dive into this framework called the Pillars of Power Analysis.
It's a strategic tool.
A powerful one, it sounds like. Designed to help you, the listener, pinpoint exactly which institutions a regime or a system or even just the status quo actually depends on.
And why you'd pinpoint them is key. It's so you can figure out how to strategically weaken them or disrupt them or maybe even win them over.
Right. It's about strategy, not just protest.
Exactly. This kind of analysis gives you the strategic thinking to get past those early stages of opposition. You know that famous line people quote.
First, they ignore you.
Then they ridicule you, then they fight you.
And then you win.
Right. The pillars analysis is basically the roadmap for getting to that win part. It's how you plan for it.
Okay, so this core idea, it sounds almost like architecture. You picture the system, maybe an oppressive regime, maybe just a policy you want to change. That's the roof.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. The roof is the thing you're focused on.
And your job, strategically, is to figure out what's holding that roof up, these institutional pillars.
And then you analyze them. The goal is to find ways to weaken those pillars, maybe even remove one or two so the whole structure starts to wobble or even collapses. You're undermining its foundation.
That makes sense.
And the core idea here, the thing you really need to grasp, is that even the most, ruthless dictator or the most charismatic leader, their power isn't absolute. It's totally contingent.
Contingent on what?
On the support, active, or even just passive, of these key institutions. And here's the strategic leverage point. Those institutions, which might look solid, like granite, they're actually vulnerable.
Vulnerable how?
To popular action, to people withdrawing their consent, their cooperation. That's the real power source.
Hold on. That feels big.
Yeah.
If the institutions are the key, and they're vulnerable to the people, why do we always seem to focus on the person at the top, the dictator, the CEO, whatever? Isn't analyzing all these institutions way more complicated?
That's a fantastic question. And honestly, it points to a major strategic mistake lots of movements make. Focusing only on the figurehead is often like treating a symptom, not the disease itself.
So the dictator is just the face.
Often, yeah. The research we looked at is really clear on this. Ultimate power doesn't reside with the president or the general. It's actually held by, millions of ordinary people.
How so?
The people who work in the courts, drive the trains, teach the kids, run the businesses, report the news. They keep society functioning day in, day out. If enough of them collectively decide to stop cooperating, to withdraw that consent,
The system just stops.
pretty much, yeah, it can grind to a halt. That's what people power actually means in practice.
Okay, but that leads to a really critical question then. If people ultimately hold this power, why do injustices persist for so long? Why don't people just withdraw their consent more often?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The research suggests it's usually not because the powerful are somehow invulnerable. It's more often because most people are simply unaware.
Unaware of the power they have.
Exactly. Unaware of the leverage they possess just by saying no collectively. Once people understand that power is institutional, that it relies on their participation, then they can coordinate. They can organize that withdrawal of cooperation. Think about huge non-cooperation movements or a general strike.
So the dictator is the easy target to see, but the institutions are the necessary ones to actually change things.
You got it. The institutions are where the real sustainable change happens.
All right, so if we accept that power is institutional, we need to understand these institutions better. Are they all the same? Or do they function differently?
Oh, they definitely function differently. And understanding that difference is crucial for strategy. You can sort of broadly group them into two main types.
Okay, what are they?
First, you've got the coercive pillars. These are the ones that compel obedience, usually through force, or at least the threat of it.
Right, the obvious ones.
Yeah.
Like the military, the police.
Intelligence agencies, the courts, the prison system, the classic instruments of state control.
Makes sense. What's the second type?
The second group are the cultural and influential pillars. Now, these guys don't typically carry guns, but they shape how we think. They shape the narrative.
Yeah, okay, so like the media.
The media, absolutely. But also the education system. Think about schools and universities. Religious institutions can be huge pillars, organize labor, unions, and, very importantly, the business community. Even international backers like corporations or other governments.
So one group forces you to comply, and the other persuades you, or at least makes the system seem normal or inevitable.
That's a great way to put it. One coerces, the other convinces or normalizes. They provide the legitimacy, the funding, the skills, the story that keeps the whole thing going.
Got it. Okay, so let's get practical. How do you actually analyze these pillars? You mentioned a tool.
Right. The first visualization tool is often called the building diagram. It's simple but powerful. You literally draw it. You put your target, the regime, the policy, the status quo up top like a roof.
Okay, roof drawn. Then what?
Then you start drawing the pillars, holding it up.
Yeah.
And you label them. And this is really critical, you have to be specific.
What do you mean specific?
Well, just writing military isn't very helpful strategically. Which part of the military actually props up this specific leader or policy? Is it the entire army? Or is it really just the, say, President's Special Guard unit?
Ah, I see. So military becomes President's Special Forces. Or maybe police becomes the riot squad division.
Precisely. Or if you're tackling a bad corporate practice, the pillar isn't just business. It might be the National Retail Federation or specific foreign investors. That level of detail is crucial for planning.
And once you've got these specific pillars labeled, what's the next step of the diagram?
And you assess each pillar along two lines. First, how critical is this pillar to the roof staying up? Is it absolutely essential or just helpful?
Okay, criticality. And the second?
Second, how vulnerable is this pillar to your campaign's influence or pressure right now with the resources you have?
Right, so you're looking for the sweet spot.
Exactly. The pillar that is both really critical to the system and relatively vulnerable to your actions, that's where you focus your energy first. That's smart strategy.
That makes a lot of sense. But you mentioned another tool, something deeper.
Yeah, because a pillar itself isn't one solid block, right? It's made up of people. So the second tool helps you look inside a specific pillar. It's often called analyzing internal construction, or just the cross-section.
Okay, a cross-section. How did that work?
Imagine you take one of those really important pillars, let's say the Special Forces unit we mentioned, and you draw a circle representing a slice through it, like looking at tree rings.
Concentric circles.
Exactly. In the very center, you put the most powerful, most loyal, most invested element. Maybe it's the commanding general or the dictator himself if he directly controls it.
The core leadership.
Right. Then in the next ring, moving outwards, you put the next group. Maybe it's the long-serving officers. And then maybe the regular soldiers in the next ring.
And further out, less connected people.
Yeah. As you move outwards, the groups generally have less direct power within the institution. And this is key. Their loyalty or connection often gets weaker, more conditional.
So using that military example, center is the general, then officers, then soldiers.
Right.
What's further out?
Well, maybe you have civilian support staff. Then maybe veterans who are no longer serving but still identify with the unit. And in the outermost ring, maybe the soldiers' families, or the communities living around the base who depend on it economically.
Wow, okay. And why is that breakdown so useful?
Because it visually shows you where your potential impact is highest. Look, you're probably not going to persuade the general in the center to switch sides, right? He's too invested.
Unlikely, yeah.
But the families in that outer ring, or maybe the younger conscripts in a middle ring, their loyalty might be much softer. You might be able to reach them. You can tailor your message to their specific concerns, remind them of their connections outside the institution.
So the cross-section helps you target your messaging and actions much more precisely within a pillar.
Exactly. It moves from the what the pillar to the who the specific groups inside it you might be able to influence.
And the source material mentioned that this kind of big picture analysis, the pillars and the cross-sections, often gets combined with other tools, like SWOT or Spectrum of Allies. Why layer them like that?
Good question. It's because each tool does a different job. Pillars tells you where the structural supports are. The cross-section tells you who is inside those supports and how they're arranged.
Yeah.
But then, say, a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, helps you analyze the internal dynamics of one pillar. What are its weaknesses you can exploit? And the Spectrum of Allies tool helps you map out those different groups from the cross-section.
To see who's already sympathetic, who's neutral, who's hostile.
Exactly. So you know who to try and move and what kind of message might work. The pillars analysis finds the structural target. These other tools help you plan the actual engagement. They work together to create a robust strategy.
This is fascinating theoretically.
Mm-hmm.
But does it actually work? Let's look at some real-world examples. Does this pillars framework hold up?
Oh, absolutely. History provides some pretty clear validation. Think about Egypt. Back in 2011, President Mubarak seemed entrenched, didn't he?
Definitely. Decades in power.
But he was forced out relatively quickly in the end. Why? Because several absolutely crucial pillars started to crack and then crumble. Specifically, key segments of the military leadership eventually withdrew their active support, and critically, so did major parts of the business community.
So the coercive pillar and an influential economic pillar both faltered.
Precisely. Once those went wobbly, the regime became untenable, both financially and in terms of its ability to enforce control.
But there's a cautionary tale there too, isn't there? From the source material.
There is a really important one for anyone thinking about this. While the revolution successfully cracked Mubarak's pillars, it didn't or couldn't build and solidify its own strong foundation quickly enough. Its own alternative pillars.
So a power vacuum was left.
Essentially, yes. And into that vacuum stepped the biggest, most organized pillar that was still standing relatively intact, the military, which is why they could retake control in the 2013 coup. Cracking pillars is step one. Building alternatives is step two.
Right. Strategic follow-through is essential. What about Serbia? Milosevic in 2000.
Serbia is a classic case study, especially for that cross-section idea. There was a definite turning point when masses of protesters were converging and the police were ordered to stop them, to fire on them if necessary.
And what happened?
They refused. Large numbers of police officers simply refused the orders. That was a fatal blow to Milosevic's authority right there.
Wow. Was that just spontaneous? Or was there a strategy behind it?
Oh, it was highly strategic. This is where the opposition group Otpor was brilliant. They had deliberately applied that cross-section thinking to the police pillar.
Oh, so.
They didn't waste time trying to persuade Milosevic's top police chiefs. Instead, they focused their outreach and messaging on the outer and middle rings, the regular rank-and-file officers.
What kind of messaging?
They reminded them constantly through leaflets, conversations, radio messages. Look at the crowd. Those are your neighbors, your cousins, your kids' school friends. Are you really going to shoot them for this regime? They emphasized shared identity, community ties over institutional orders.
So they appealed to connections outside the pillar to weaken loyalty inside it.
Exactly. It was a deliberate strategy to induce disobedience by targeting the more vulnerable rings. And it worked. When your coercive forces refuse to coerce, the game is usually up. You see the same dynamic when soldiers start deserting, especially higher-ranking ones. That's a clear signal. A critical pillar is crumbling from within.
And this isn't just history, is it? The research points out this is happening now.
For sure. Movements today, like Price of the Black Lives Matter movement, for example, are implicitly or explicitly using this logic. They target the pillars, upholding systems they see as unjust, like police violence.
What does that look like in practice?
Well, you see examples like appeals to National Guard members, which sometimes results in them laying down shields. Or think about transit workers, bus drivers, refusing orders to transport arrested protesters to jail. Each is a small withdrawal of consent, a crack in a pillar, applied strategically.
So it's about finding those specific points of leverage within the institutions.
Yes, it's calculated, often localized, withdrawal of cooperation and consent happening right now.
Okay, bringing this all together then. This whole way of understanding power seems to have a lot of evidence behind it.
It really does. Time and again, across different continents and cultures, we've seen very repressive regimes, guys with massive armies, ultimately toppled by largely unarmed people.
Not by winning a gunfight.
No. But by understanding how power actually works, that it rests on these pillars of consent and cooperation, and then systematically dismantling those pillars through nonviolent action, through withdrawing that consent, it fundamentally challenges that old idea that violence is the ultimate source of power.
So for you listening, hopefully this deep dive gives you a really solid framework. It's not just about knowing what power is, but really understanding how it's held up, how it's sustained day to day.
And therefore, where its vulnerabilities might actually lie. It shifts your focus from just the figurehead at the top to the institutional structures underneath.
which are made of people.
We're made of people. So we've established that the leader's power depends on the institutions, and those institutions depend on people's cooperation. And we talked about how even the strongest pillar has that internal structure, those concentric circles.
With loyalty often getting weaker as you move away from the center.
Exactly. So here's something to really chew on. If we know that every pillar, no matter how solid it looks, is built like that with those rings of potentially diminishing loyalty, what does that internal structure tell us about the potential seeds of change, maybe even collapse, that might exist within any system, however stable it seems on the surface?